Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Everything Kratom, the podcast about anything and everything Kratom. Great to have you with us on this Thursday morning, hoping all is going well with you as always. Today I wanted to touch on a comment that I got on YouTube the other day. I don't do as much on YouTube. I've been trying to kind of migrate my episodes over onto there as well, just to have it on a new platform, and to have it as accessible as possible to everybody. But, it's a little bit behind the podcast, I guess, in terms of, Spotify or Anchor or Apple or everywhere else that the podcast goes. But I got a comment on YouTube the other day that was really interesting. It kind of sparked my thought process. This is going to be a shorter one today, but I just kind of wanted to talk through it with you. So they commented on one of my videos and said that they were against regulation of Kratom entirely. And they said that the reasoning why was because once you start regulating something, it can create this cascading effect where you can regulate it further. You can create more rules. There can be more restrictions. And, basically the way they worded it, it sounded to me like they were afraid of once you start rolling the snowball down the hill, you can't really stop it. Like it's going to get bigger. It's going to gather more, momentum. And eventually what you got is a giant boulder of a snowball. So those were my words, not theirs, but I'm just kind of breaking down what they said. And I've often spoken on this show about how I think that regulation of Kratom in certain ways is a good thing, and that you need the sorts of things that you find in, your typical Kratom Consumer Protection Act, some sort of age limit, some sort of limit on the amount of 7-hydroxymetragenine can be found in Kratom, things like that. But I've always also been open about the fact that I don't think it should be illegal, and I don't think it should be restricted in any way other than what you might find in the production acts that people come up with in different states. And I must admit when I haven't thought about things as deeply as I should have. And that's something that I think was a good point this person brought up. I haven't thought as deeply about the fact that once you start regulating something, you've opened it up to that process. It's like, well, it's going to be regulated again. Once you have a government policy, it can be changed and it can be tinkered with, and it might not always be tinkered with in the way that you originally agreed it should be enacted. So I thought it was a fair point, and I thought that it was something that I haven't really talked through before because I haven't really thought it through before, to be honest, and somewhat embarrassingly so. But it's a good point, and I wanted to spend a little time thinking about it, because if a Kratom Consumer Protection Act is passed in a state where, there isn't one, for instance, that really is taking something that, in that current moment is kind of like the Wild West, which necessarily isn't a good thing, but could be not a bad thing. And it's giving it a name, a name and a number and an address. Like it's making it so that there's something to build off of. Whereas before it's just kind of like, it's illegal or it's fine, but nothing in between. Once you do that actual law, what are you opening it up to? Well, I can imagine that the age limit might be changed, right? Age limits for other things have been changed over the years. Cigarettes, alcohol, things like that. Driving. all those things. I can imagine that the chemical compositions can be changed, or the alkaloid profiles. What if they start limiting the amount of metragenine that can be found in Kratom? That might, lead to someone taking more than they normally would. What if they start limiting the amount that you are allowed to buy or possess at any one time? Kind of like some of these early cannabis laws where you're only allowed to hold up to an ounce. So that might, be transferred into some sort of limit on the number of grams of Kratom that someone can hold at any one time. And how realistic is that, or how does that affect people's lives? It's just, it's really interesting, and I hadn't thought through it before. And I guess I could develop a bit of a fear around that if I started seeing some changes around these policies. I think that ultimately, some sort of regulation is good still, But this does make me think deeper about it and more purposefully, because although I do think that regulation to some degree is going to be needed to have Kratom kind of be opened up and become a more normal part of society in some ways, although that's a whole nother topic for another time that we could talk through, I also think that if you create a law around Kratom and then you also take into account the fact that we're living through this terrible opioid crisis right now, it's not just independent of itself in history and everything going on, around the country. Like, it's not just, we have this perfect Kratom Consumer Protection Act and all is well. It's like, well, what if you have enough people in positions of power or enough people who experience loved ones who die, who have Kratom in their system, who want to revisit this? Well, now it's not just an obscure plant that nobody knows about. No, one can say, hey, I don't want this thing to be around anymore. And here is the law that's currently allowing it to be a thing. So I am formally, forming a movement to ban Kratom and dissolve the KCPA of this state, like the Kratom Consumer Protection Act of this state. Look at how the state currently has it. It has it as a legal substance. It's written into law. How terrible is that? You kind of see what I'm saying? It's almost like giving a name to a face to something that maybe doesn't have it as much. And really, I'm not trying to put negativity on Kratom Consumer Protection Acts, obviously. I mean, I actually think highly of them, but I do see how it can help become something to rally against by having it there in the first place, Then again, I also think about, this is of course just me rambling through my own thoughts, live here this morning. Sometimes I do this, but it also makes me think about the idea that right now, just because Kratom might not be illegal in a state doesn't mean that people can, they can still rally around the idea of making it illegal in that state. So I guess that previous thought, there's also that caveat as well. So it's just something that I need to start thinking about more deeply. I think ultimately that there's got to be some sort of balance of regulation and not, but I also see this person's concern and think it's a valid one, and I think that it's something that I should start taking more seriously and into account as I'm talking about this sort of thing. Like, you're opening up a new can of worms by passing a KCPA. You're writing into law that this state is okay with this substance and it's going to regulate it this way. Well, if something goes terribly wrong, or if there's enough of a shift of public opinion, there's, you've provided a route to go against that KCPA simply by having it there, So just food for thought, something to think about. I'm not necessarily pressing my opinions on anyone, and I'm still trying to figure out my own opinions about this stuff. I think that it's not easy for me to just blindly have an opinion on Kratom. I'm continuing to develop it, and I certainly see it differently today than I did on my first episode so many months back. So thank you all so much for listening and for your comments. It really does affect every day in all these episodes. It affects my view of Kratom, and you're helping me to develop a more rounded sense of how I should view this amazing, wonderful, strong, impressive, but strong plant that affects so many people's lives and including mine. So thanks so much. I think you're improving me as a person. We'll put it that way. So I'll sign off with that, and thanks again. Please do keep the comments coming. Keep your emails coming too. I've received a lot of really great ones recently, and I don't want to call out every single person here and there unless you give me permission. But I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it when you share your stories with me and when you want to talk to me. It's so cool. It's exactly what I was hoping this would do. We've accomplished it. We've created a Kratom community. Let's keep it up. Okay, everybody, have a great rest of your Thursday. I know you're going to be great today. And finish out the week strong tomorrow with our episode to end the week. All right. Meet you back here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Take it easy, everybody. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.